Hi, my name is Ryan Bledsoe. I'm with Frothy Monkey Roasting Company, and welcome to part 3 of Tasting Coffee Like a Pro. Today we're going to talk about sweetness, bitterness, and acidity, and how all three of those things are able to be perceived in your coffee. Now, your coffee has to have that inherently to some degree. We can't add it from the roasting standpoint at least, so you have to start with high quality coffee from a reputable roaster to actually get the chance of actually perceiving these things. So first we're going to talk about sweetness and how you can perceive that in your coffee. Now with sweetness, again, there's sugars that are inherent in the coffee, and we can manipulate that a little bit in the roasting process. So we can create more of a caramelized sugar note in it if we take it darker. But again, a light roast coffee isn't necessarily sweeter or less sweet than a dark roast coffee. It just depends on what kind of sweetness you want from it. A lot of times when I'm talking about perceiving sweet levels, I talk about chocolate. Chocolate's a fairly common taste in coffee. And so I get people thinking about what type of chocolate they're getting. So most of the time when we're talking types of chocolate, we're talking about the sugar content. Is it more of a milk chocolate with sugar and cream? Is it more of a semi-sweet chocolate? Is it a dark chocolate? But dark chocolate could be 60%, but it could be 80%. So it just depends on how the chocolate cacao notes blend with the sugar levels in the chocolate. So a lot of times that's how I get people thinking about the level of sweetness in their coffee. Next, we're going to talk about bitterness. Bitterness is one of those weird things that people either love or hate. Now, it's not unnatural for you to not like bitter notes because things in nature that are bitter tend to be things that are dangerous for us. So we tend to stay away from them. That being said, again, higher quality coffee, for the most part, should have very minimal bitterness to it. When you take something darker, you do enhance the bitter notes, and so low-grade coffee will tend to be roasted darker to eliminate any unpleasant notes in the coffee. So that's why a lot of times cheap, kind of low-grade coffee will have more bitter notes naturally. But that being said, bitterness, when it's balanced with everything, is actually a really enjoyable taste. Now, if you're getting bitterness in your coffee, and you're starting with high-quality coffee, we're going to look more to how you're brewing it. If you're over extracting the coffee and you're letting water spend too much time with the coffee or using too hot of a temperature, a lot of these things will actually over extract the coffee, which will pull more of the bitter notes out of it. And if you're trying to perceive the bitterness, think about is it kind of creating a drying mouthfeel? Is it a very watery body? Those things are going to pinpoint when you've over extracted your coffee. If you go to our website at frothymonkey.com and you click on the coffee tab, you will actually see brew guides listed, and we've shown you how to brew the best coffee with whatever method you're doing at home. And then lastly, we're going to talk about acidity in your coffee. Again, it's all what's inherent in the coffee, and we do have a little bit of an ability to manipulate that in the roasting process here. So if you don't like acidity, and especially acidity in your coffee, you'll typically gear towards the medium to darker roasts. Lighter roasts, if there's a lot of acidity in the coffee bean, they'll be more highlighted at lighter roasts. So I definitely recommend like acidity. Stick with the medium to darker roasts. Now, when we're tasting acidity, we'll separate it typically a lot of times by the types of fruit, the type of acid. So for example, oranges, lemons, limes, we're all hitting the citrus acids. If you're looking at malic acids, we're talking about more apples and peaches. And then other acids like tartaric, which can commonly be found in grapes. Now, we want a balance of all of these things in our coffee. For example, if we roast something darker and bring out maybe a little more of the bitterness, we're probably reducing the sweetness a little bit. And then, as we just mentioned, the acidity can change with the darker roast profile. So we're trying to find a balance based on what we want out of the coffee and what's inherently good inside the coffee beans that we're roasting. So we've talked about taste versus flavor. We've talked about the body and the mouthfeel. We've talked about sweetness, bitterness, and acidity. All of those things will help you taste coffee more like a pro. But if you want to go further down the rabbit hole, I highly recommend looking at World Coffee Research and their sensory lexicon. It breaks down in a lot of ways very common notes in coffee and how you can experiment at home with actually getting those flavors that are common in coffee. From my personal experience, I recommend getting out there, eating, drinking, trying new things. All of that is going to help build your experience of tasting and smelling, and that's going to get you a better range of flavors and smells that you can pull from when you're actually tasting coffee. Thank you for watching Tasting Coffee Like a Pro. Please subscribe for more coffee education.